Anime sure loves its theme songs. Most anime series will have at least 2 songs in them to act as the OP and ED respectively, thus no shortage of tunes. As can be expected, these Japanese anime series tend to choose Japanese artists to make songs in Japanese. But every now and then, you'll get whiplash by an anime series deciding that it's going to feature some non-Japanese music. And I get double whiplashed whenever this non-Japanese music is from the UK. Anime and British music is a surprisingly frequent combo, and I want to talk about some of my favourite examples of British songs in anime in this video. Now, I don't listen to that much music. In fact, the only albums I've ever listened to all the way through have been this and this. I regret nothing. I don't have that many artists whose music I listen to frequently, popular or otherwise. But I feel this is the one time I should at least attempt to talk about Western bands, for you see, I am British, and I hope you don't mind me saying, but when it comes to music, my goodness, we're cultured. So I think we're starting to go beyond just the simple licensed tracks that I'm going to talk about in this video, and we're going to eventually see British artists actually making songs just for the purpose of featuring in an anime. Recently, Youngblood did a full-on original song for Kaiju number 8, and this means that now the possibilities are endless. Maybe in the future they'll even select artists who aren't dog shit. One of the most famous examples off the bat, Boa. Okay, maybe you don't know Boa, but you probably know their song Duvet. If you don't recognize the name of that song, that's okay, because they don't say the word duvet in the song called Duvet. But you will probably recognize the fact that it's the opening to 1998's Serial Experiments Lain. Serial Experiments Lain is a conceptually eccentric piece of hard sci-fi. Well, it was hard sci-fi at the time, now it's just regular living. So you'd think that the opening song would go for some more futuristic sounding instrumentation instead of the mainly acoustic guitar backing. But it's the ethereal feeling of the lyrics that feel like the perfect thing to set the tone at the top of an episode of Serial Experiments Lain. The director had this exact thought process, since he chanced upon a Japanese translation of the lyrics while Serial Experiments Lain was in production and thought they felt surprisingly fitting, so sought the song out, and very helpfully, Boa was signed to a Japanese label, so that made the song's inclusion a lot easier. The whole thing came as a pleasant surprise to Boa, as Duvet is their most popular song by a long margin, even reaching platinum status. The singer, Jasmine Rogers, later watched Serial Experiments Lain for herself, and she had this to say about the series. Relatable, honestly. But keeping with the theme of British music that goes to experimental places, we've got to talk about prog rock. Some say that Britain is the spiritual home of prog rock, and it's hard to overstate the impact of bands like Pink Floyd. Yes, the guys from the shirt. Pink Floyd were revolutionary in the music sphere, as they changed not only how music was made, but also how songs were written, since they attempted to approach much more grandiose themes. Take their song from the Dark Side of the Moon album, Great Gig in the Sky, which was Roger Waters' melancholic reflection upon Hiyori from Blue Archive. Pink Floyd aside, another one of the biggest British prog rock bands at the time was Yes, and this video is now a JoJo's reference. Yes's song Roundabout was used as the ED to the first season of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, a series that is already packed to the gills with references to Western music and British culture, with part 1 being set in Buckinghamshire, because what better way is there to signal that this is a series about bloody beatdowns and cursed sights than setting it near Aylesbury. Though when the season got to part 2 and the action left Britain, the Yes homages only increased, with Taku Iwasaki incorporating Owner of a Lonely Heart's riff into the opening of Welcome to the World. Once again, best JoJo soundtrack, you know I'm right. This is sort of perfect, since back in 2012, JoJo's and Yes kind of embodied the same reputation. Both were weird, icons of the late 20th century, and never knowingly underdressed. There's a reason that this was the first JoJo's reference to properly transcend the anime community, and seeing it brought back for the end of part 6 was just perfect. However, the exact reasoning for why it was used in the first season of JoJo's as an ED is much simpler than what I've been implying, because that song just happened to be what Araki was listening to while he was writing that part of the manga. It's for this exact same reason that every other JoJo's part has the ED song that it has, just because it was a Western song that Araki was listening to while the manga was coming out. This process has its upsides and its downsides. The downside is that if they ever adapt Steel Ball Run, there's not a 100% chance that the cowboy JoJos will have actual country and western music playing in the ED. The upside is that since JoJo Land is being written right now, there is a not 0% chance that I Can't Put Down the Cup is the ED song, and that would be really funny. So I guess that's what they mean by swings and roundabouts, eh? I said, I guess that's what they mean by So as I got researching this video, turns out there's only so much I can say about some of these examples. Sure, I could talk about how they put Freddie Mercury as the ED of Great Pretender, but it's not that much of a surprise that an anime called Great Pretender was going to put a song called Great Pretender in there somewhere. It would be more noteworthy if they didn't do that. That would be like if there was an anime named after something the Beatles did and then it didn't include any music by the Beatles. Okay, bad example. But one of the most surprising examples of a British song in a Japanese anime was on a little show called Eden of the East. Not only does Eden of the East have one of the best ED sequences I've ever seen, seriously, this is mental, but it's also one of the best death game anime series about. The reason it stuck around is because of its engaging pair of lead characters, and how they were given 1 billion yen with which to solve Japan's problems. A lot of the scenes use real locations in Japan, as well as world building that ties into modern Japanese history and the Japanese economy. The overall goal of the death game is, as stated, to save Japan. It's a very Japanese series, so why oh why did they choose to have Oasis music for the OP? It's not like there aren't any foreign influences in Eden of the East, it's just that most of the foreign influences are mainly American. The first episode takes place in Washington DC, with actual American actors voicing the American characters. Then there's several references to American musicians. Brenda Vaughn's Reveal the World is played in one of the scenes, and there's also a character who's like Chuck Berry, except instead of writing Johnny Be Good, they write Johnny Be Gone. Here in England, there are some people who view Oasis as gods because they have made being from Manchester their personality, and there are some people who hate Oasis because Liam Gallagher stole George Harrison's haircut, and being from Liverpool was their personality. But no matter what you think, you have to admit Oasis are pretty huge. That's even true in Japan, with Don't Look Back in Anger and Wonderwall being staples of any Japanese person trying to show off their knowledge of English culture at a karaoke bar. The specific Oasis song they used was Falling Down, and it said a lot of Oasis music sounds the same, but Falling Down stands as an antithesis of this statement, with it fitting surprisingly well for a high-stakes thriller. It was also Oasis' last hit single before they broke up in 2009. It's pretty unexpected for an anime to get the rights to a song that was in pole positions in the UK and US charts today, let alone back in 2009. Unfortunately, international versions only played Falling Down over the opening of the first episode, because copyright is a thing. Oh yeah, copyright's a thing. This video's gonna be a fucking nightmare to upload. My final example today is from a British group that's a bit more obscure than Yes or Oasis, but achieved a new level of fame thanks to the inclusion of their song in Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Originally, I was just gonna make this video about how this song was used in Edgerunners, because the placement of it is something that should be studied for its genius, but it requires a bit of a story. Edgerunners came out a year and a half after the launch of Cyberpunk 2077, and we all know how that one went. Bugs, underbaked systems, and crashes. I'm of the position that I always liked Cyberpunk 2077, and no amount of glitches prevented me from kind of loving what I played through. But even I knew that this score was bullshit. Come on, IGN. A few months after the release of Cyberpunk 2077, details came to light about what broke this respective camel's back, and it was the marketing. This game had the second largest development budget of any game that had ever been released, yet half of it had been blown on marketing. As a result, hype was out of control and resources were being stretched. For example, they decided to spend a significant portion of development trying to get the Arch motorcycle into the game, which they announced in a trailer in mid-2020. I remember this specific trailer because there's this song in the background. A song which, upon first hearing it, captivated me. Anyway, the game released, it didn't do very well. But fast forward to 2022, and CD Projekt Red were in the process of gaining back their reputation after their hyped-up project blew up in their face. And another company who were doing that exact same thing was Studio Trigger, who since setting fire to their reputation with Darling in the Franxx, had decided to experiment with their anime series output and created some of their best works. Edgerunners had also been announced in mid-2020, and since then we had heard practically nothing about it until 1 month before release in 2022. As someone who both enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077 and was gaining a new appreciation for Studio Trigger at the time, I was very, very skeptical going in. I felt that this was a part of CD Projekt Red's bloated marketing budget, and was not really expecting much going into the anime. But then, when I started the series, I heard this song, which is a song by a British group. The sequence in which this song is used is fairly early on in the series, though it's repeated a few times, and it managed to fit the vibe it was going for perfectly. That song from the Arch Motorcycle reveal all that time ago was called I Really Wanna Stay at Your House by Let's Eat Grandma, a pop duo from Norwich. I'm not talking about that song, because the song that sold me on Edgerunners was actually This Fire by Franz Ferdinand. Yeah, you forgot about this song, you fucking shouldn't have. Franz Ferdinand are a band from Scotland, and they were pretty huge in the early to mid-noughties. Several of their songs, like Take Me Out, were always playing on the radio when I was young. Funnily enough, This Fire was not Franz Ferdinand's first appearance in an anime, since the single they released right after This Fire was called Do You Wanna, and was used as the ED for Paradise Kiss. But it's not the presence of Franz Ferdinand in the OP that surprised me. It's the fact that This Fire wasn't as popular as some of their other singles. Yes, it was from their debut album, which was a smash hit, but even then, This Fire was relatively low profile since it peaked at 8 on the UK charts and only scratched the top 100 in America. It didn't even graze the charts in Poland and Japan. So the fact that the chosen song was not a more popular Franz Ferdinand song or even a brand new song, but instead something relatively obscure from 20 years ago proved something to me. Trigger and CD Projekt Red chose this not to advertise the series, but to properly underscore it. And that shows they had faith in their vision. And that gave me faith in their vision. And that's when I knew that Edgerunners was going to be amazing. Also, I Really Want to Stay at Your House is a good song. I told you there's only so much I can say about some of these examples.